of working more closely with CAC and enhancing safety. Well, thank you again. Now it gives me a great pleasure to introduce our next speaker. As I said earlier in my remarks this morning, we're unable to hold these events without sponsorship, and we're very grateful to the Gulfstream for being a gold sponsor. With that, I'd like to introduce Keith Colmer. He's the Vice President, Flight Operations of Gulfstream Aerospace. Keith is responsible for all flight operations, including experimental and production tests, airborne, customer support, demonstration flights, and corporate air transportation. So Keith will be talking about safety innovations. Thank you. 谢谢.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present at today's Asian Business Aviation Association and China Aviation Cooperation Program Safety Day in 2021. It's a great privilege and honor to show you some of the latest Gulfstream safety innovations that are currently in development for the G650, G700, and many that are already in use on the G500 and G600 aircraft. Gulfstream leads the industry in certifying safe, simple, and intuitive safety features for new and in-production aircraft. Today, we will show you our 2D and 3D aircraft moving maps and cockpit traffic displays, which are currently in operation on the G500 and G600 aircraft. These will also be available soon for the G650. Additionally, we have descriptions and videos of Gulfstream's autopilot TCAS, or autopilot traffic collision avoidance system, also known as APTCAS, and the predictive landing performance system, PLPS. These will be available soon on the G650 and will also be included on the new G700 and as a future upgrade on the G500 and 600. Lastly, we'll show some flight test video on our newest innovation, the Combined Vision System, or CVS. CVS combines both infrared camera images, part of the Gulfstream EVS system, and computer-generated terrain or synthetic vision. These enable safe approaches and landings under low visibility and poor weather conditions. Let's get started. Our two-dimensional or 2D and three-dimensional or 3D cockpit displays were first available with our G series of aircraft. These two models, the G500 and G600, have these novel displays as standard equipment. The 2D display improves the primary map display in the aircraft, adding high-resolution features to the airport depiction. The detail is amazing and shows high-fidelity representations of the runway, taxiways, and ramp areas. This gives the crew additional situational awareness and safety by assisting with taxi instructions, visualization of where you are on the ramp, and ramp orientation. The 3D display improves upon the primary flight display, or PFD, normally used to represent attitude, airspeed, altitude, and flight director information in flight. Upon startup and taxi, the PFD automatically converts to what we call the exocentric view, which provides a perspective of a camera trailing aft and above the actual aircraft. This gives the pilot a three-dimensional view of the ramp. And I think my video might be disabled. I'm going to try it again. Okay, hopefully you can see my video now. So the exocentric view provides a perspective view of a camera trailing aft and above the actual aircraft. This gives the pilot a three-dimensional view of the ramp, taxiways, and runway to include airport signage. During takeoff, the 3D exocentric display automatically reverts back to the PFD, displaying critical flight information. Upon landing, the PFG changes into the 3D exocentric display upon reaching taxi speed. This video has no audio. This is a demonstration of 2D and 3D cockpit displays on the G650. It's the part of the Block 3 upgrade, which is currently completing certification testing. It demonstrates two displays a pilot will see when in the cockpit just after landing on runway rollout. On the left display, you can see the primary flight display, or PFD, with small windows to the left of the PFD for flight controls and brakes optics. There's also a 3D depiction of the runway and airport signs on the PFD in the non-exocentric view, also known as the egocentric view. On the right, you can see the 2D moving map display, which shows a highly detailed view of the airport and taxiways, along with engine displays in the small windows to the right of the map. After the aircraft slows to taxi speed, the PFD automatically changes to the exocentric view and demonstrates the perspective and awareness the crew will have exiting the runway. The map display on the G500 and G600 will soon be available in Block 3 on the G650, displays enhanced airborne and ground traffic information using ADS-B. This upgrade to the map display provides an additional layer of situational awareness, providing traffic flight ID, altitude relative to your own aircraft, and a predicted flight path line. The display also tells the crew the current closure rate between the traffic and your own aircraft, and as the traffic is climbing or descending. The airborne traffic is depicted in the cyan or light blue coloring. Ground traffic is also displayed on the 2D map at capable airports using the brown colored symbols that you can see on the bottom left slide. The ground traffic can be aircraft or vehicle traffic, driving on the airport ramp like rescue vehicles, baggage carts, or fuel trucks. The display of ground traffic greatly enhances situational awareness and safety during low visibility conditions at the airport. TCAS, or Traffic Collision Avoidance System, has been available for some time in all large passenger aircraft. TCAS provides a traffic advisory, or TA, when conditions exist between two aircraft that warrant extra attention. A resolution advisory, or RA, is an alert provided to subsequent to a TA and requires both aircraft to maneuver to avoid passing too close or hitting each other. The TCAS system automatically computes separate flight paths for each aircraft to fly in order to provide adequate separation. Traditionally, these maneuvers are flown by hand upon receiving the alert, with pilots disconnecting the autopilot. Guidance is provided on the primary flight display or heads-up display to coordinate aircraft movement away from each other via climbs, level offs, or descents. Because of the startle fact, it is not uncommon that one or both of the pilots take delayed action, or even worse, incorrect action. Autopilot TCAS was developed to allow the aircraft to remain on autopilot and the maneuvers flown automatically by the aircraft with the pilot's monitoring. This minimizes the response time and eliminates trajectory errors on the part of the pilot. This capability will be fielded soon on the G650 Block 3 and following on the G500, 600, and G700 aircraft. In this video, you will see both primary flight and map displays during a flight segment with a traffic advisory, followed by a resolution advisory. The autopilot is on and remains on during the maneuver. This note states that the autopilot TCAS response is to be secondary to pilot action, meaning that the pilot should intervene manually if they are aware.
Traffic.
You hear the traffic call out. The yellow circle now displayed on the map is the traffic advisory. The yellow circle will turn into a red square when it's apparent the aircraft will get too close. This is a resolution advisory requiring cooperative responses for each of the aircraft. The oral warning is now descend, and is being flown by the autopilot, in this case without pilot involvement.
Clear of conflict.
Once the two aircraft are no longer on a collision course, clear of conflict is enunciated and the autopilot levels the aircraft. Gulfstream's Predictive Landing Performance System, or PLPS, is a new safety feature that helps inform pilots of their ability to land and stop on the runway of choice, given their current conditions. Excessive airspeed or altitude, along with poor airport control, can lead to unstable approaches, long landings, and subsequent mishaps on landing rollout. PLPS is designed to inform the pilot prior to landing of these conditions so that adjustments or a go-around can be made, ensuring a safe approach and landing. PLPS uses real-time aircraft energy, velocity, and altitude, along with predicted path to the runway to inform the pilot when a landing attempt should not be made. Additionally, PLPS will warn the pilot if they are not lined up with the correct runway or are erroneously lined up on a taxiway. Once on the ground, PLPS continues to perform calculations of the actual stopping distance and will warn the pilot if current conditions will result in a runway departure. PLPS takes into account the pilot selected auto brake settings prior to landing and matched thrust, reverse, and braking requirements once the aircraft is on the runway. Auto brakes are standard on the G650, G500, G600, and G700. There are 3 settings for auto brakes during landing. The first setting is low, which provides the least amount of braking. Maximum auto brakes are 100% continuous application of full brake pedal travel. This brings the aircraft to a very rapid and safe stop. Normal passenger operations, however, use the medium or low settings. This is an example of a normal approach with a normal landing and braking. There is no audio on this video. This is the primary flight display, or PFD. The PLPS display is in the lower left corner and displays at approximately 1,500 feet above ground level on approach, with gear down and flaps set to landing. The PLPS display is a representation of the runway with stopping points identified with green bars, the first for maximum braking and the second for one with the auto brakes low setting. These small 6 white boxes highlight 3 sets of gray hash marks, which represent the last 3,000 feet of the runway. The runway prior to these 3 hash marks is not drawn to scale. The point labeled max is where the predicted stop point for the aircraft using maximum braking. The brake point labeled low is the predicted stop point with auto brakes set in a low setting. Now the video will be advanced at 8 times speed up to the landing. Once on the ground, the white circle with the hollow center displays in the lower left corner where the aircraft will stop based on its sensed deceleration. The low auto brakes predicted stopping point disappears since it is not in use. The maximum effort braking stop point depicted by the max green line continues to update based on actual aircraft location on the runway. An example of an unstable approach followed by a go-around that likely would not have ended successfully if the crew had tried to land. First, I'll play the video through in real time so you can see some of the cues and oral alerts.
Landing distance, landing distance. 400. Check auto brakes. Landing distance, landing distance. 300. Approaching minimums. 200. Go around, go around. Minimum.
Plus 20. I was right gear up.
Now let's slow the video down to look at each of the cues and oral alerts provided to the crew. The first cue we notice is that the max and low cues are all the way at the end of the runway on the PLPS runway display in the lower left corner of the PFD. This is due to the aircraft being above the glide path and on a shorter runway, now only approximately 6,000 feet long. The max and low cues also change color from green to cyan, which indicates that the stopping distance for the low auto brake setting is off the runway.
Landing distance.
Next, the max and low cues change to an amber color, indicating the stopping distance for the max auto brakes or maximum manual effort is well off the runway.
400.
At 450 feet, the entire PLPS runway display turns an amber color and the words landing distance flash in the HUD and in the upper middle of the primary flight display. Next, the pilot makes some adjustments to the flight path, bringing the stopping point for maximum braking onto the runway. However, the selected auto brake setting is still off the runway. The words check auto brakes are displayed in the HUD and in the upper middle of the primary flight display. The pilot makes another adjustment to the flight path, which takes the maximum effort braking point or max auto brakes off the runway. And we see a return to the flashing landing distance words and oral alert.
Approaching minimums.
Once below 200 feet,
200.
if the landing distance is off the runway, the pilot will be instructed to go around and receive the corresponding oral alert. The crew will honor this alert and perform a go around and reattempt landing may be executed.
Gear up.
This last video in the PLPS series shows the alerts and oral warnings that occur once the aircraft is on the ground and not braking sufficiently to remain on the prepared surface. Here, the pilot's flight path has the stopping point for maximum braking to the runway. However, the selected auto brake setting, low, is still off the runway. Once the aircraft is below 450 feet above ground level, the words check auto brakes are displayed in the HUD and in the upper middle of the primary flight display. An oral alert also accompanies the flashing words. This is the alert to the pilot that the existing auto brake selection won't be sufficient to keep the aircraft from going off the end of the runway. This is a relatively normal approach. However, the runway in this video is only 4,700 feet long.
500. Check auto brakes. 400. 300. Approaching minimum. Minimums. 200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Upon landing, we can see that our predicted stopping point,
Increase
annotated by the white circle,
braking.
is off the runway
Increase
departure
braking.
end.
Max brakes, max reverse, max brakes, max reverse, max brakes, max reverse, max brakes.
We get the
max
words
reverse.
increase braking to alert the pilot that the existing braking is not enough to keep the aircraft on the runway. Finally, the alert updates to a flashing red banner with the words max brakes, max reverse, along with the PLPS runway symbol turning red. I hope this has been a good demonstration of the PLPS system and its visual and oral alerts designed to improve runway pilot awareness and overall safety. The last innovation we would like to present today is our new Combined Vision System, or CVS. Historically, Gulfstream aircraft were the first equipped with the Enhanced Vision System, or EVS. This system uses a forward-looking infrared camera to detect approach and runway lights in low visibility conditions. This image is normally superimposed on the heads-up display, or HUD, enabling the crew to descend lower on the approach and conduct a safe landing in conditions that normally would require breaking off the approach. Our newest generation of aircraft in development, the G700, has an added set of features along with the latest generation of EVS cameras. In addition to the infrared image displayed on the HUD, we also generate synthetic terrain on the HUD. This is called the Synthetic Vision System, or SVS. The synthetic terrain is computer constructed and a visual depiction of the terrain outside to include mountains, obstacles, and water features. This synthetic terrain is overlaid on the real terrain using highly accurate position data from navigation satellites. and enables the crew to see a virtual depiction of the terrain at night or in low visibility conditions and clouds. The Combined Vision System, or CVS, integrates both EVS and SVS seamlessly to improve pilot situational awareness in poor weather or at night. Ultimately, this system can bring an aircraft safely in for landing under these conditions. As shown in the slide on the image, EVS can be overlaid on top of the SVS image, providing fused virtual and infrared imagery. Aircrew can select EVS only, SVS only, or combine data as desired or needed for the approach. The concept of operations for the Combined Vision System is to utilize the synthetic vision system from the top of descent to the final approach fix. The infrared camera of the enhanced vision system is utilized to acquire the approach and/or runway lights in poor visibility prior to the decision altitude so that the aircraft can safely descend and land. Fusion of both the SVS and EVS results in the Combined Vision System, which provides seamless transition between the two. This video is an example of an approach and landing using CVS. This is an ILS Zulu approach to runway 14 at Gulfport, Mississippi. The minimums for this approach are 200 feet, requiring visibility of 1800 RVR using flight director or autopilot. The video you see in the pilot's view in the heads-up display. And it'll come up now. The entire width of the HUD has the synthetic terrain displayed. The area around Gulfport is coastal and the average terrain is flat, about 27 feet above sea level. The smaller rectangle in the lower or middle section of the HUD is the EVS display, which is produced by the infrared camera. It is overlaid on the synthetic terrain, resulting in a fused image in the middle with synthetic terrain and infrared display combined. You can see the wisp of clouds on the EVS image. This approach was early in the morning before sunrise. In the image, you can see a synthetic representation of the airport area and runway, along with the computer-generated run-in line for the final approach path. Now you can see here a portion of the Combined Vision System image where the synthetic underlay has been removed. This decreases clutter in the combined image and increases the chance that the crew will pick up the runway lights using the infrared camera. As we get in closer, you can see the infrared camera depictions of the approach lights, and finally the runway end lights prior to a successful landing. Without the Combined Vision System, the aircrew wouldn't have been able to visually acquire the approach or runway lights prior to the decision altitude and would have had to execute a missed approach. In summary, Gulfstream is heavily invested in research and development that adds value for our customers in three key areas: safety, performance, reliability, and availability. Today's presentation highlights examples of our dedication in developing industry-defining safe aviation practices. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present at today's forum. We look forward to continued engagement with the China Aviation Cooperation Program and the Asian Business Aviation Association. Thank you.
Keith, thank you very much for your presentation. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Doug Carr. He's Vice